The mimosa glass shattered across the white tablecloth. 200 people froze. Forks suspended midair. Conversations died. And then came the sound that would destroy a family dynasty. The crack of Garrett Bennett's palm against his pregnant wife's face. But here's what nobody knew. What the viral video didn't show. What those 200 witnesses couldn't see. Garrett's mother had changed her will that morning, 9:15 a.m., two hours before the brunch. She knew what was coming. She'd planned it, orchestrated every humiliating second. This isn't just a story about a slap heard around the country club. This is about a trap set by a monster in Chanel pearls. About a pregnant woman with no money and no escape plan who had to choose between her dignity and her survival. About a family fortune built on lies that was already gone before the betrayal even happened. 7 months pregnant, $0 in her bank account, a prenup she signed without reading, and a mother-in-law who'd done this before. To another woman, decades ago, the Bennett family pattern: marry the wrong woman, destroy her, keep the money, repeat. But Harper Bennett made a choice that Mother's Day, a choice that would expose everything: the affairs, the embezzlement, the decades of abuse hidden behind old money and country club memberships. She chose to fight back. This is her story, every brutal, beautiful minute of it. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you believe that leaving is possible, even when you think it's not, even when you're terrified, even when everyone says you can't. And if this story resonates with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you think. Share this with someone who needs hope today. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this. More women who fought back. More endings that prove you're stronger than you know. Now, let me tell you how it really started. Let me tell you about the morning Vivian Bennett changed her will and set the trap that would destroy her own family. The mimosa glass shattered first, then Harper's world. The sound cut through the polite conversation at Meadowbrook Country Club like a gunshot. Harper Bennett watched the crystal tumbler explode against the white tablecloth, champagne and orange juice spreading like blood across the expensive linen. Her hand trembled. She'd only reached for water, just water. The baby was doing somersaults inside her, pressing against her ribs, making her clumsy and desperate for something cold to drink. "Can't you do anything right?" Garrett's voice carried across the Mother's Day brunch. 200 faces turned toward their table. Harper felt heat crawl up her neck. She was 7 months pregnant, wearing a navy dress Vivian had approved 3 days ago. The dress fit wrong. Everything fit wrong now. Her body wasn't her own anymore. "I'm sorry," Harper whispered. She grabbed for a napkin. Her fingers wouldn't work properly. The baby kicked hard, like a warning. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up." "You always do this." Garrett's face was red. The vein in his temple pulsed. Harper knew that vein. Had learned to watch for it over 2 years of marriage. When it throbbed, she needed to make herself smaller, quieter, less. But there was nowhere to go. 200 people watched. Harper's mother-in-law sat across from her, perfectly composed. Vivian Bennett wore cream-colored Chanel. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant twist. She didn't move to help, didn't reach for napkins. She just watched Harper struggle with something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Garrett, please." Harper kept her voice low, soothing, the way she'd learned to talk to him when his temper rose. "It was an accident. The baby kicked and I just—" The slap came so fast Harper didn't see his hand move. One moment she was apologizing. The next, fire exploded across her left cheek. The sound echoed through the dining room. A meaty crack that made someone's grandmother gasp. Harper's hand flew to her belly, not to her burning face. To protect the baby, always protecting the baby first. The room went silent. Harper's ears rang. She could feel her pulse in her cheek, could feel 200 pairs of eyes on her. A teenager 3 tables over held up a phone. Recording, always recording. Everything was content now. Everything was viral potential. Harper counted in her head. 1, 2, 2, 3, breathe. Her therapist had taught her this technique. When the panic came, when her chest got tight and the world tilted sideways. Except this wasn't panic. This was everyone finally seeing what she'd hidden for so long. This was the private shame becoming public spectacle. Vivian took a sip of her mimosa. Calm, unruffled. like her son hadn't just struck his pregnant wife in front of the entire country club. Philip Bennett, Garrett's father, stared at his plate. His hands shook slightly, but he didn't speak. Never spoke. Not when it mattered. Harper, a hand on her elbow. Sloan Martinez, Harper's best friend since college. The one person Garrett hadn't been able to isolate her from completely. Sloan wore a red dress and fury in her dark eyes. She was only 5'3", but she could make herself enormous when she needed to. We're leaving, now. Harper's legs wouldn't work. The baby was doing backflips. Or maybe that was Harper's stomach churning. She couldn't tell anymore where she ended and the baby began. 7 months pregnant meant every organ was rearranged. Every feeling was amplified. Every humiliation was carved deeper. I should stay, Harper heard herself say. I should apologize. You're not apologizing for anything. Sloane's voice was steel. She physically lifted Harper from the chair. Not roughly, but firmly, the way you might handle someone in shock. Someone who couldn't think clearly. Someone who might walk back into the burning building because it was home. Harper stood. The room spun. She put a hand on the table to steady herself. Vivian's eyes followed her. Cold. Calculating. There was something in that gaze that Harper would spend the next few hours trying to understand. Something that looked almost like triumph. Harper Elizabeth Bennett. Garrett grabbed her wrist. His fingers dug into the tender skin above her pulse point. Sit down. You're making a scene. She's making a scene? Sloane's laugh was sharp. You just hit a pregnant woman in front of 200 witnesses and she's making a scene? More phones came out. Harper could see them in her peripheral vision. Little glowing rectangles. Recording, posting, sharing. By tonight, she'd be a hashtag. A moment. A cautionary tale in someone's think piece about wealthy men and the women who marry them. Sloane pulled Harper away from Garrett's grip, guided her through the silent crowd. Harper kept her eyes down, counted her steps. 1, 2, 3, breathe. The baby kicked frantically, like it could sense the danger, like it knew they needed to run. The spring air hit Harper's face when they reached the parking lot. Cool, clean. She sucked in a breath and tasted freedom mixed with terror. Behind them, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the brunch continuing. People were talking now. Animated conversations, scandalized whispers, entertainment over Eggs Benedict. And there, still seated at the Bennett family table, was Vivian. She was smiling, not shocked, not embarrassed by her son's violence, not mortified by the public spectacle. She was smiling like everything had gone exactly according to plan. Harper's knees buckled. Sloane caught her before she hit the pavement. The baby kicked one more time. Hard, insistent. And Harper realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that this wasn't just about a spilled drink. This wasn't just about Garrett's temper or Vivian's control. This was a trap, and she'd walked right into it. Sloane's law office was downtown, on the 14th floor of a glass building that reflected the sky. Harper had been here before, for lunch meetings, for coffee and gossip, back when Harper's life was still her own. Before Garrett, before the Bennett family swallowed her whole and forgot to spit out the bones. The bathroom had good lighting, too good. Harper stared at her reflection and watched the handprint bloom across her cheek. Red at first, then deeper, purple creeping in at the edges. By tomorrow it would be spectacular, yellow and brown and green, a painting of violence on her face. She touched it, winced. The baby kicked again. Gentler now, like an apology, or maybe a promise. We're in this together, you and me against the world. I know, Harper whispered to her belly. I know we have to leave. The bathroom door opened. Sloane came in carrying a camera. Not a phone, an actual camera with a flash and everything. She was already in lawyer mode, hair pulled back, expression serious, ready for war. Don't, Harper said automatically. Yes. Sloane moved closer. 3 angles, good lighting, evidence. Harper wanted to argue, wanted to say this was the first time, that Garrett had never raised a hand to her before, that this was an aberration, a fluke, a one-time thing that would never happen again. But Sloane's expression stopped her. This is the first time he hit you in public, Sloane said softly. Isn't it? Not a question, a statement. Harper's throat closed. She nodded. Once, small. How long? Sloan took the first photo. Flash. Harper flinched. How long has he been hurting you, Harper? He doesn't. Harper stopped, started over. It's not like that. It's not regular. It's just when he's stressed, when the company, when his mother, when I do something stupid and he just... She was doing it again, making excuses, minimizing, explaining away the bruises on her arms that she covered with long sleeves, the shove 3 months ago that sent her into the wall. She'd blamed pregnancy clumsiness, told the doctor she was just clumsy now that her center of gravity was off. The doctor hadn't believed her. Harper could see it in the woman's eyes. But what could a doctor do when the patient wouldn't admit the truth? I'm not crazy, Harper's voice cracked. I told myself it was stress, the business, his mother, the pregnancy, but I'm not crazy. No, Sloan took another photo. You're not crazy. You're in an abusive marriage. There's a difference, Abusive, the word landed like a second slap. Harper wanted to reject it, push it away, but it sat there between them. True, undeniable, the thing she'd been avoiding for 2 years. Harper did what she always did under stress. She organized, emptied her purse onto the bathroom counter, sorted the contents into neat piles, expired grocery receipts. Lip gloss she never wore because Garrett said it made her look cheap. Tissues, gum, a credit card. Wait, Harper picked up the Visa, turned it over. She tried to use it last week to buy maternity clothes. The card had been declined. She'd been so embarrassed, standing at the register while the clerk tried it 3 times. Harper had apologized, said there must be a mistake, paid with cash from her emergency stash. My bank account, Harper said slowly. Can you pull it up? Sloan opened her laptop, logged into the secure portal. Harper provided her password. They both stared at the screen. Joint account with Garrett Bennett, Harper's marketing director salary, $58,000 a year. Direct deposited every month for 3 years. Until 2 weeks ago. Current balance, $0.00. Where did it go? Harper's voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. Someone whose husband hadn't just drained her bank account. Someone whose life wasn't imploding in real time. Sloan scrolled through the transaction history. Transferred to an account ending in 7439. That's not yours. Harper shook her head. 3 years of her salary, gone, just gone. She had no money, no way to leave even if she wanted to, which was the point, wasn't it? Garrett had been planning this, making sure she was trapped, dependent, unable to run. Harper sat on the cold bathroom tile, fully dressed, shoes on. She couldn't process standing anymore. The fluorescent lights hummed. Her phone buzzed in her purse. 15 texts from Garrett. She didn't need to read them. She knew what they'd say. I'm sorry, baby. You know I didn't mean it. The stress got to me. Come home. We'll talk about this. I love you. Please come home. She turned the phone face down. The baby did a somersault. Harper pressed her palm against the movement. The only thing that still made sense, this life inside her. This person who didn't ask to be born into a war zone but was coming anyway. Ready or not. Harper. Sloan's voice was gentle. There's something else you need to know. Sloan's phone was ringing. She answered on speaker. A man's voice came through, older, tired, stressed. Ms. Martinez, this is Thomas Bradford. I'm the Bennett family attorney. I need to speak with Harper. Today, before Garrett gets to her with his version of events. Harper's blood went cold. His version of what? There was a long pause. Then Thomas said the words that would change everything. The will. Vivian changed her will this morning, 9:15 a.m. Witnessed it. The brunch started at 11. Harper stopped breathing. The baby kicked. Once. Twice. 3 times, frantic. Sensing the danger even from inside the womb. What does that have to do with anything? But even as Harper asked, she knew. She knew. Everything, Thomas said. It has to do with everything. Thomas Bradford arrived at Sloan's office in 20 minutes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. Gray hair disheveled, tie slightly crooked, briefcase clutched in both hands like it contained explosives. Which Harper supposed it did. The paper kind. The kind that destroyed lives without making a sound. He'd known the Bennetts for 30 years, handled 3 generations of trusts, estates, business contracts, corporate mergers, prenuptial agreements. Thomas had drawn up the prenup Harper signed 3 days before her wedding. The prenup she'd been too young and too in love to have reviewed by her own attorney. God, she'd been so stupid. I shouldn't be here, Thomas said. He set his briefcase on Sloane's conference table. His hand shook. Attorney-client privilege. But what I witnessed this morning, what Vivian did, I can't. I have daughters, granddaughters. I can't stay silent. What happened this morning? Sloane's voice was steady, professional. She had a legal pad out. Taking notes already? Building the case? Thomas opened the briefcase, pulled out papers, set them on the table like evidence at a crime scene, which Harper supposed they were. Vivian changed her will at 9:15 this morning. I witnessed it. She was very specific about the timing. Said it needed to be done before the Mother's Day brunch. Thomas looked at Harper. She knew. Before it happened, she knew what Garrett would do. Harper's brain stuttered, tried to process, failed. How could she know? Because she's been setting this up for months. Thomas slid the papers across the table toward Harper. Everything goes to Garrett. The estate, the company shares, the properties, everything. But it's contingent on specific conditions. Harper picked up the papers, read the conditions. 1, Garrett must remain CEO of Bennett Industries. 2, Garrett must remain married to someone Vivian approves. 3, any divorce results in the company voting shares transferring to Vivian's charitable foundation. 4, the prenuptial agreement includes a morality clause. Either party engaging in adultery, substance abuse, or behavior unbecoming, the Bennett name forfeits all claims. Harper's hands shook. The words blurred. She'd signed that prenup. 3 days before the wedding, Garrett's lawyer, no, Vivian's lawyer had presented it as standard for families of means. Harper had been 26, in love, intimidated by the Bennett wealth and pedigree. She'd signed without reading every clause, signed without her own representation. Sloane said a word that would make Harper's mother wash her mouth with soap. Please tell me you didn't. I did. Harper's voice was hollow. I signed it 3 days before the wedding. I was so scared they'd call it off if I asked for changes. So scared Garrett would think I was a gold digger. I signed it. Every memory was reframing itself in real time. The engagement party where Vivian had cried. Harper had thought they were happy tears. But no, Vivian had been upset that Garrett chose someone unsuitable, someone from the wrong background, someone who went to state school instead of Yale, someone whose mother worked at a grocery store instead of serving on charity boards. The wedding dress. Vivian had insisted Harper wear the Bennett family gown, the one Vivian had worn, the one Garrett's grandmother had worn, heavy silk that smelled like mothballs and crushed dream. Harper had wanted something lighter, more her, but Vivian said tradition mattered, and Harper had given in. The pregnancy announcement. 5 months ago, Harper had been so excited, had made a special dinner, wore the dress Garrett liked, told him they were having a baby, and Garrett had said finally, not congratulations, not I'm so happy, not this is wonderful news, finally. Like Harper had been failing some tests she didn't know she was taking. Like her only value was producing an heir to the Bennett fortune. Like she was livestock, breeding stock, a vessel for the precious Bennett bloodline. She planned this. Harper heard herself say the words, felt them vibrate in her chest. Vivian planned the whole thing. She changed the will this morning, before the brunch. She knew Garrett would snap, knew I'd leave after he hit me in public. And when I leave, he loses everything. But she maintains control. The foundation she controls gets the company shares. She wins. Thomas nodded slowly. That's not all. Garrett's been building a case against you for months, documenting your supposed emotional instability, your therapist visits, your financial irresponsibility. What financial irresponsibility? Harper's voice rose. The baby kicked in response to her elevated heart rate. I haven't had access to money for months. He drained my bank account. He canceled my credit cards. I can't even buy groceries without asking him first. Thomas's face confirmed her worst fear. Exactly, he's been creating a narrative. When you leave. And Vivian knows you will after today. Garrett will claim abandonment. Will say you left him during your pregnancy, during a health crisis. The prenup's morality clause works both ways. He'll argue you abandoned the marriage, violated your vows, forfeited your claims. Harper's hands moved to her phone automatically. She wanted to call her mother, tell her everything. Hear Diane Crawford say, "I told you so," because her mother had said it 2 years ago when Harper announced the engagement. That family will eat you alive, baby girl. But Harper had defended Garrett, had been so sure love conquered all, had believed that Garrett was different from his family, that he loved her for herself and not for what she could provide. God, she'd been so young, so stupid, so desperate to be chosen by someone wealthy and successful and powerful. Like his love could transform her from a girl whose mom clipped coupons into someone worthy of country club brunches and European vacations. There's something else. Thomas pulled out another document. Owen contacted me last week. Garrett's brother. He wants to help you. Said he has information about the company that could change everything. Owen Bennett, the disappointment, the one who refused to join the family business, who worked in the nonprofit sector making a fraction of what Garrett earned. Vivian called it throwing his life away. Garrett called Owen weak. But Owen had always been kind to Harper, had warned her once softly that the Bennett family wasn't what it seemed from the outside. Harper should have listened. What kind of information? Sloan was already making notes, planning strategy, building the counterattack. Thomas hesitated. I can't say attorney-client privilege, but Owen will meet it with you if you want. He has evidence. 3 years worth. He's been collecting it since Garrett married you. 3 years. Owen had been watching, waiting, hoping Harper would wake up and see what everyone else saw, that Garrett Bennett was a monster in a custom suit, that Vivian Bennett was a puppet master pulling strings, that the whole family was poison wrapped in old money and social prestige. Harper stared at her reflection in Sloane's conference room window. 7 months pregnant, handprint blooming on her cheek. No money, no escape plan, a prenup that left her with nothing, and a mother-in-law who had orchestrated this entire disaster with surgical precision. But she wasn't 26 anymore, wasn't desperate for approval, wasn't willing to shrink herself to fit someone else's idea of who she should be. She was 29, about to be a mother, and angry. So angry she could feel it burning through the fear. Call Owen, Harper said. I want to hear what he has to say. Owen Bennett met them at a coffee shop, not Sloane's office. They have people everywhere, he'd said. The coffee shop was in a neighborhood the Bennetts would never visit. Small, independent, the kind of place that served fair trade beans and had mismatched chairs. No one here would recognize the Bennett name or care about country club scandals. Owen looked like Garrett, but softer. Same dark hair, same blue eyes, but his eyes crinkled at the corners from smiling instead of scowling. He wore jeans and a button-down. No designer labels, no Rolex, no signet ring with the Bennett family crest. At 35, Owen had spent a decade trying to separate himself from the family legacy. Mostly he'd succeeded. He stood when they approached, hugged Harper carefully, mindful of her pregnant belly. I'm so sorry, he said. I should have done this sooner. They sat. Owen ordered decaf tea for Harper without asking what she wanted. The kind of thoughtfulness Garrett had never managed. Harper wrapped her hands around the warm mug. The baby settled, like it could sense safety for the first time in hours. Owen slid a folder across the table. Plain manila, thick with papers. I've been collecting this for 3 years, since Garrett married you. I thought maybe if he had something to lose, he'd become better. His laugh was bitter, hollow. I was wrong. He just became better at hiding. Sloane opened the folder, started reading. Her expression darkened with each page. Harper watched her best friend's face and felt dread pool in her stomach. What is it? Harper asked. Everything. Sloane looked up, her eyes blazed. Financial records showing Garrett embezzling from company charitable donations. Emails between Garrett and your mother-in-law discussing how to manage your behavior. Text messages between Garrett and multiple women. Photos of his business trips that weren't business at all. Harper couldn't breathe. The baby kicked frantically, sensing her distress, responding to her elevated heart rate and spiking blood pressure. She forced herself to take slow breaths. Count. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. Owen reached across the table, stopped before touching her, asking permission with his eyes. Harper nodded. Owen covered her hand with his. The affair started 6 months into your marriage. Maybe earlier. I didn't start documenting until later. There might be more I don't know about. 6 months. Harper had been so happy then. Still working at the marketing firm, still seeing her friends, still believing she'd married a good man who loved her. She'd noticed Garrett working late more often. Sure, but she'd believed him, trusted him, been so stupidly naive. I should have told you sooner. Owen's voice cracked. I kept thinking he'd change, especially when you got pregnant. I thought maybe becoming a father would make him better. But this morning, when my mother called me, gloating about changing the will, laughing about how perfectly her plan was working, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. She called you? Harper's voice came out wrong. Too high, strangled. Owen nodded. She was proud, excited, she said. She said she'd orchestrated the whole thing, the public humiliation. Said Garrett was too weak to control you properly, so she had to take matters into her own hands. Said you'd leave now, just like she planned, and Garrett would lose everything, but she'd maintain control of the company through the foundation. She was celebrating. Harper felt something break inside her chest, some last remaining piece of hope that maybe this was all a misunderstanding, that maybe Vivian wasn't actually a monster, that maybe the Bennett family had some redeeming quality she just hadn't seen yet. But no, this was deliberate, calculated. Vivian had weaponized her own son's violence to achieve her goals, had turned Mother's Day, a day meant to honor mothers, into an ambush, a trap, a public execution of Harper's dignity. She's done this before. Owen was still talking, his voice distant, like he was remembering something painful. My father's first wife, before he married my mother, her name was Catherine. She was kind, gentle. My dad loved her, but she wasn't from the right family, didn't have the right connections. My grandmother drove her out, told everyone Catherine was mentally unstable, said she'd abandoned the marriage. Catherine lost everything in the divorce. I was 10. I remember her crying at my birthday party, trying to say goodbye. I didn't understand then why she was leaving. I do now. The pattern, the Bennett family pattern, marry the wrong woman, make her life hell, document her instability, drive her out, keep the money and the power and the pristine reputation. Rinse, repeat. Generation after generation of women destroyed on the altar of the Bennett family name. Harper excused herself, found the bathroom, stared at her reflection in the grimy mirror. The handprint had faded to dull red. Tomorrow it would be yellow-brown, then gone. But the interior bruises didn't fade as fast. Those lasted years, decades, forever. She washed her hands, once, twice, 3 times. The way she always did when overwhelmed. The water ran cold. Her wedding ring caught the light. Diamond solitaire. 2 carats, platinum band. She'd been so proud of it once, had felt so chosen, so special, so stupid. Harper twisted the ring. It came off easily now. 7 months pregnant meant her fingers were swollen, except when they weren't. The ring felt heavy in her palm, expensive, meaningless, a pretty collar for a pet that forgot its place. She dropped it in the trash can. Then she walked back to the table, sat down, looked at Owen with clear eyes. Tell me everything. I want to know all of it. Harper's phone rang while Owen was explaining the financial documents. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Almost sent it to voicemail, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Bennett, this is Detective Sarah Gonzalez with the county police. We've received a complaint about a domestic disturbance at Meadowbrook Country Club. I need to speak with you about pressing charges. The words took a moment to land, to make sense. Pressing charges, criminal charges, against Garrett for hitting her in public with 200 witnesses. I, Harper's voice failed. She tried it again. I don't. I wasn't going to. I just want to leave. I understand. Detective Gonzalez's voice was kind but firm, professional but warm. The voice of someone who'd seen this before, who knew the statistics, who understood that abuse during pregnancy increased the risk of fatality by 40%. But 12 witnesses have already come forward. The country club manager provided security footage. Your husband's mother tried to have it deleted. She offered money. That's witness tampering. Which makes this easier, actually, for prosecution. Vivian had tried to delete the footage. Of course she had. Trying to control the narrative. Trying to make it go away. But 12 people had already spoken up. 12 strangers who saw violence and decided not to look away. 12 people who cared more about a pregnant woman's safety than about protecting a rich man's reputation. I need to think about it. Harper's hands shook. The baby did gymnastics. Can I call you back? Of course, but Mrs. Bennett, Harper, the video is already online. From that teenager's phone, it's getting shared, a lot. You should know that before you decide anything. The call ended. Harper stared at her phone, opened social media with shaking hands, typed her own name in the search bar. There it was, the video, crystal clear. Garrett's hand connecting with her face. The sound, her hand flying to her belly instead of her cheek. The look on Vivian's face. Satisfied, pleased. The teenager had captured everything. 200,000 views already, comments flooding in, some supportive, some vicious, some debating whether she deserved it, whether she provoked him, whether she was playing victim for attention, whether this was real or staged or exaggerated. But the video didn't lie. The sound of the slap, the shock on her face, the instinctive protection of her unborn child, the way Garrett didn't even look sorry, the way Vivian smiled. Press charges. The words came out steady, clear. Harper looked up at Sloan, at Owen, at the folder full of evidence. All of them, whatever there is, I want to press all the charges. Detective Gonzalez arrived at Sloan's office within 30 minutes. She was in her 40s. Latina, wedding ring, photos of kids on her phone that she didn't show, but Harper could see in the way she held it. She'd done this before. Sat with women who were deciding whether to fight back or disappear, whether to make noise or go quietly. Harper chose noise. Tell me what happened. Gonzalez had a recorder, a notebook, the same kind of care in her voice that made Harper want to cry. When was the last time someone had asked her what happened and actually cared about the answer? Harper told her everything. The spilled drink, Garrett's anger, the slap, the way her hand went to her belly first, the way Vivian smiled, the way 200 people froze and watched and did nothing until Sloan pulled her out. Then Harper told her the rest. The shove 3 months ago. I fell into the wall, blamed pregnancy clumsiness, the grip on her arm that left bruises shaped like fingers. I wore long sleeves to work for 2 weeks. The time Garrett threw her phone, shattering it against the kitchen tile. He said I was texting my mom too much, that I needed to focus on him. On us. Gonzalez wrote it all down, every detail, every incident. Every time Harper had made excuses or minimized or convinced herself it wasn't that bad. The detective's face stayed neutral, but her pen pressed harder into the paper with each revelation. Your therapist. Gonzalez looked up. You mentioned therapy. You've been documenting the stress? Yes, for 6 months. My doctor recommended it. For anxiety. She was worried about my blood pressure. About the baby's health. Harper laughed without humor. Garrett's using those visits against me. Says they prove I'm unstable. Actually, they prove you are trying to cope with an abusive situation. Gonzalez's smile was sharp, satisfied. Every piece of evidence his mother collected to paint you as unstable actually proves systematic abuse. The isolation, the financial control, the escalating violence, the psychological manipulation. We can use all of it. Harper's phone exploded with notifications, text messages, voicemails, emails. She glanced at the screen. Her mother, her sister, her old colleagues from the marketing firm. The video had reached everyone she knew. Harper's face, frozen in shock and pain, was everywhere. "Let me see." Sloan took the phone, scrolled. Her expression darkened. "Garrett posted on social media about your mental health struggles, about pregnancy hormones, about seeking help for his wife." Of course he did. Classic, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Darvo. Harper had learned the term in therapy, had learned all the patterns, the cycle of abuse, the honeymoon period, the tension building, the explosion, the apologies, the promises to change, the gifts, the romance until the next time. There wouldn't be a next time. Harper was done being a target, done being manageable, done apologizing for existing in a way that inconvenienced powerful men. "What happens now?" Harper asked. Gonzalez explained. Assault charges would be filed. Garrett would be arrested. Harper would need photos of her injuries, a medical evaluation, documentation of the baby's health, statement from her therapist, the security footage from the country club, witness statements from the 12 people who'd already come forward. "He'll make bail within hours," Gonzalez warned. "Probably today. Men like this always do. But there will be a restraining order. He can't contact you, can't come near you. If he violates it, he goes to jail. No bail." Harper thought about her daughter. Yes, daughter. She'd known since the 20-week ultrasound. The technician had whispered it when Garrett wasn't in the room. Against policy. But the technician had seen something in Harper's face. Some desperate need to know. To have one secret. One thing that was just hers. Garrett wanted a boy. Bennett men need sons. He'd said it so many times Harper had stopped counting. Said it while touching her belly. While talking about the future. While planning the nursery in colors he approved. Blue, gray, nothing soft, nothing pink. Nothing that suggested the weakness of femininity. But Harper was having a daughter. And that daughter deserved better. Deserved a mother who didn't apologize for existing. Who didn't shrink. Who didn't teach her that love meant accepting violence and calling it stress. "Do it." Harper looked at Gonzalez, at Sloan, at Owen, at the folder full of evidence. "File everything. I want him arrested. I want it on record. I want my daughter to know that when someone hurts you, you don't make excuses. You make them accountable." Sloan's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, looked up at Harper with something between satisfaction and concern. "Garrett's been arrested. He's at the station now, demanding to speak with you. Says he'll make this go away if you just come home and talk." The old Harper would have gone, would have believed him, would have convinced herself that this time would be different, that he really was sorry, that she'd provoked him, that she needed to be more careful. Better, smaller, less. The new Harper, the mother Harper, said no. Harper didn't go home, couldn't go home. The house was in Garrett's name. Another manipulation she'd missed. Her grandmother had left her $50,000 when she died. Harper had wanted to buy a small condo, start building equity. But Garrett had convinced her to put the money toward their house, toward their future. Except the title was only in his name. For tax purposes, he'd said. For estate planning. For reasons that sounded legitimate until they weren't. Sloan offered her guest room, but Harper needed her mother, needed the house she grew up in, the bedroom with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the kitchen that smelled like coffee and fabric softener, the safety of familiar things. Diane Crawford lived in a modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs, vinyl siding, chain-link fence, garden gnomes in the front yard that Garrett had mocked the first time he saw them. Working-class neighborhood where people fixed their own cars and borrowed sugar from neighbors and didn't care about country club memberships. Harper's mother opened the door before Harper could knock, like she'd been watching for her, waiting. Diane took one look at Harper's face and pulled her into a hug, careful of the belly, fierce with protection. "I didn't say it," Diane whispered into Harper's hair. "You don't need to hear I told you so right now." But she had told her, 2 years ago when Harper announced the engagement, "That family will eat you alive, baby girl." And Harper had been so offended, so defensive, so sure her mother was wrong. was jealous, was trying to ruin her happiness because misery loved company. Turned out her mother had just been right. Your room still has your old bed. Diane guided Harper inside, made her tea. Honey, not sugar, the way Harper had liked it since childhood. We'll make it work. You and the baby. We'll figure it out. Harper wanted to believe her, wanted to think that love and determination were enough. But she had no money, no job anymore. She'd quit when Garrett insisted, when he said a Bennett wife didn't need to work, when he made it clear that her career was an embarrassment to him, that his income was enough for both of them, that she should focus on the house, on him, on preparing for motherhood. Another trap she'd walked into smiling. 3 a.m. came fast and brutal. Harper lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at glow-in-the-dark stars she'd put there at age 12. They still glowed, faint, ghostly. The baby kicked, relentless, uncomfortable, pressing against her ribs and bladder and every organ that had been rearranged to make room. Harper whispered to her belly, to her daughter, I'm sorry I picked wrong. I'm sorry you don't have a daddy who loves you right. I'm sorry I don't have money saved. I'm sorry I'm not ready. The baby kicked again, not angry, just present, just existing, just saying, I'm here, you're here, that's enough for now. Harper's hands rested on her stomach, on the curve of new life, on the person who would look to her for everything. Love, safety, guidance, truth. But I'll figure it out. I promise we'll figure it out. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Harper ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. She finally looked. 47 missed calls, 15 voicemails, 63 text messages, all from Garrett's phone, from his lawyer, from numbers she didn't recognize. One email from the Bennett family PR firm. Subject line, joint statement opportunity. Harper opened it against her better judgment. Read the drafted statement they wanted her to sign. My husband and I are working through a difficult time. I overreacted to a stressful situation, and the video circulating online doesn't show the full context. We ask for privacy as we focus on our growing family and healing our relationship. Neither of us is perfect, but we love each other and are committed to making our marriage work for our child's sake. Every sentence made Harper smaller, erased her, turned violence into mutual conflict, made her complicit in her own abuse, gave Garrett what he wanted most, absolution without accountability, forgiveness without change. Harper deleted the email, blocked the PR firm, blocked Garrett's lawyer, blocked every Bennett-adjacent number in her phone except Owen's. Morning came, gray light through childhood curtains. Harper's mother knocked softly. Coffee's ready, decaf for you. I made pancakes. The kitchen was exactly as Harper remembered. Linoleum floors, laminate counters, mismatched chairs around a table that had hosted countless family dinners, homework sessions, heart-to-hearts. This was home, not the showplace in the expensive neighborhood, not the house with crown molding and Italian marble. This, where people loved each other without conditions, without contracts, without violence disguised as passion. Harper's phone rang while she was drowning pancakes in syrup. Sloan. Owen found something. Bank records from the company. You need to see this. Today. They met at Sloan's office. Owen had his laptop open, spreadsheets covering the screen. Numbers that meant nothing to Harper, but everything to her future. Bennett Industries. Owen turned the screen toward her. Third-generation manufacturing company. Worth $80 million on paper. Except it's not. Not anymore. Harper stared at the numbers. Red. So much red. Garrett's been embezzling. Owen pulled up more documents, more evidence, more proof that the perfect Bennett family was rotten at its core. But not to hide money, to fund gambling, day trading, cryptocurrency speculation. He's lost millions. The company is leveraged to the breaking point. One bad quarter, and it's bankruptcy. Does Vivian know? Harper already knew the answer. No. That's why she changed the will this morning. She thinks she's securing the family fortune, but there's no fortune left to secure. Garrett's been hiding the losses for 2 years, cooking the books, lying to the board. If they find out, when they find out, he'll lose everything anyway. Harper started laughing, couldn't stop. The baby kicked in protest, but Harper just laughed harder. Vivian had orchestrated this whole elaborate trap, had weaponized her son's violence, had changed her will with surgical precision, had planned Harper's humiliation down to the minute, all to maintain control of a fortune that no longer existed. It was almost poetic. The arrest is going to trigger audits. Sloan was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Investigations, public scrutiny. The board will demand answers. And when they find out what Garrett's been doing, with company money, he's done. Good. Harper wiped her eyes. That's good. But Sloan's expression said there was more. Something worse. Something Harper needed to prepare for. What? Harper asked. He wants to meet Garrett with you in my office, with Detective Gonzalez present, recorded. He says he'll sign whatever you want for the divorce. Forget the prenup, joint custody, child support, whatever you need. Just make a statement. Say it was mutual. Say you're co-parenting. Save the company. Harper understood immediately. Garrett needed her, needed the appearance of stability, needed to be able to tell the board that everything was fine, that the viral video was a misunderstanding, that his pregnant wife supported him, that they were a united front. He needed her to lie, to save him, to sacrifice herself one more time so he could escape consequences. Set up the meeting, and Harper said, I'll go. Garrett arrived at Sloan's office in a suit, perfectly pressed, tie straight, hair combed, like he was going to a business meeting instead of trying to manipulate his pregnant wife into protecting his crumbling empire. His lawyer trailed behind him, young, nervous, probably new to the firm, and desperate to impress his rich client. Detective Gonzalez was already there. Recording equipment set up, rights read, everything official and legally binding. No chance for Garrett to later claim he'd been misquoted or misunderstood. Harper sat across from her husband and felt nothing. That was the strangest part. No fear, no love, no residual affection, nothing. Like looking at a stranger who wore Garrett's face but had none of the power he'd once held over her. The man who'd made her pulse race with a smile could now barely hold her attention. Baby, please. Garrett's voice was soft, pleading. The voice he used during the honeymoon phases, after the explosions, when he needed her forgiveness. You know I didn't mean it. The stress, the company, my mother. I just snapped. It'll never happen again. Harper studied him, really looked at him for the first time in months, maybe years. He was handsome, that hadn't changed. But there was something weak around his mouth, something calculating in his eyes, something she'd refused to see when she was desperate to be chosen by him. You're right, Harper said calmly. It'll never happen again, because I'll never be in the same room with you without witnesses. Garrett flinched. Good. He should flinch. Should feel 1/10 of the fear he'd made her live with every day. I'll sign whatever you want for the divorce. Garrett leaned forward, earnest, desperate. Forget the prenup. It was my mother's idea anyway. I never cared about that stuff. Joint custody, child support, whatever you think is fair. Just make a statement. Tell people it was mutual, that we're co-parenting, that you support me. The board is calling for my resignation. If the company goes down, there's no child support. Anyway, we both lose. Sloan started to speak, but Harper held up a hand. She wanted to hear all of it, wanted Garrett to finish digging his own grave with his desperate bargaining. I'll give you the house, Garrett continued, your name on the title, and I'll put money aside, in trust, for the baby. $1 million, guaranteed, no matter what happens with the company. Just please, Harper, I need you. There it was, the truth under all the pretty words. I need you. Not I love you, not I'm sorry, not I was wrong. Just I need you to save me from myself, to protect me from consequences, to be useful one more time. Harper let the silence stretch, let Garrett squirm, let him remember what it felt like to be powerless, to need something you couldn't take by force. Then she said the words that would end him. I want the recordings from your office security system. Garrett's face went white. What recordings? The ones that show you with your executive assistant and the intern from last summer and the sales director in your office. on company time. I'm sure the board will find those very interesting during their ethics investigation. Owen had provided those recordings. Bethany Walsh, Garrett's executive assistant, had been collecting them for over a year. Insurance policy, self-protection. She'd watched Garrett destroy 3 women's careers with sexual harassment, complaints that were dismissed or buried or settled quietly. She'd stayed silent to keep her job, to pay her mortgage, to feed her kids, until the slap, until she saw the video, until she couldn't pretend anymore that staying silent was neutral. Bethany had sent Owen everything, every recording, every email, every text message, every piece of evidence that proved Garrett Bennett was exactly what he looked like, a predator in an expensive suit. You can't, Garrett stood up. His lawyer grabbed his arm, tried to pull him back down. Those are private. You have no right. Actually, company security footage belongs to the company. Sloane's smile was sharp, dangerous. And we've already provided copies to 3 board members who've been asking questions about employee turnover in your department. They were very interested. Harper watched her husband unravel, watched the mask slip, watched the charming facade crack to reveal the scared little boy underneath. The boy who'd never been told no, who'd never faced consequences, who'd learned from his mother that manipulation and money could fix anything. Harper, please, Garrett's voice broke. Tears, real ones this time. Not calculated, not performed. Actual fear. They'll destroy me, the board, the media, everyone. I'll lose everything. Good. Harper stood up, 7 months pregnant, exhausted, wearing her mother's borrowed clothes, but standing taller than she had in 2 years. You should lose everything. You hit a pregnant woman in public. You isolated and abused and financially controlled me. You cheated. You lied. You stole. You deserve to lose everything. The door burst open. Harper jumped, protective instincts flaring. But it wasn't danger. It was Vivian Bennett, immaculate as always. Pearls, Chanel, hair perfect, makeup flawless. But there was wildness in her eyes Harper had never seen before. Desperation, fear, the loss of control. You will not destroy this family. Vivian's venom was aimed directly at Harper. You came from nothing. You'll return to nothing. That baby's a Bennett. She stays with us. Harper felt something shift. Final, absolute. She'd spent 2 years trying to earn this woman's approval, trying to be good enough, polished enough, quiet enough, proper enough, small enough to fit into the box labeled Bennett wife. No more, Mamar. Her name is Grace. Harper's voice was steady, clear. Grace Crawford Bennett. She'll have my mother's name too, and you'll never be alone with her. Ever. Vivian's hand rose, like she might strike Harper the way her son had. But Owen stepped between them, his body a shield, his voice cold. Touch her and I'll make sure every board member sees the videos. All of them, including the ones of you bribing the country club to delete security footage. That's witness tampering, Mother. A felony. Vivian lowered her hand, turned to Garrett. Fix this, now, make her sign the statement, whatever it takes. But Garrett couldn't fix it, couldn't make Harper do anything. The power had shifted, had been shifting for hours, days, since the moment his hand connected with her face in front of 200 witnesses. The lawyer presented papers, divorce agreement, everything Garrett had promised. The house, child support, full custody with supervised visitation only. No fighting, no appeals, clean, simple. Over. Garrett signed with shaking hands. Harper signed with steady ones. 27 months of marriage. Dissolved in 27 signatures. Detective Gonzalez confirmed the assault charges would proceed regardless. Criminal and civil are separate, she explained to Garrett's lawyer. The divorce doesn't erase his crime. Harper left Sloane's office without looking back. Left Garrett and Vivian and the ghost of who she tried to be for them. The elevator doors closed on Vivian's face. Pinched, furious, powerless. That night, Harper sat in the nursery at her mother's house. Small room, donated crib from the church. Walls painted yellow because Diane couldn't afford anything fancy. But it was clean, safe, filled with love instead of expectations. Harper folded tiny clothes. gender-neutral ones from her baby shower. The shower she'd had before Garrett forbade her from having one, before he isolated her from friends, before he decided that everything about her life needed his approval. She held a onesie that said "Little Miracle," pressed it to her face, breathed in the smell of detergent and hope. The future was uncertain, terrifying. She had no job, no money beyond what Sloan was helping her get from Garrett, no plan beyond survive today and tomorrow will take care of itself. But she had her mother, had Sloan, had Owen, surprisingly, had herself back, had her daughter coming soon, had the strange, powerful knowledge that she'd survived the worst things she could imagine and was still standing. Harper's phone buzzed. News alert. She almost didn't look, then did. Bennett Industries CEO resigns amid scandal. Company faces federal investigation for fraud. It was starting. The unraveling, the consequences. The justice she'd been told wasn't possible for men like Garrett, men with money and power and family names that opened doors. Turned out those doors could close too, when enough people decided to stop looking away. Owen called the next morning. Mother called an emergency board meeting. She's trying to install herself as interim CEO, but 3 board members walked out. They're demanding a full audit. The FBI is getting involved. She's losing control of everything. Harper sat at her mother's kitchen table, drinking decaf coffee that tasted like disappointment but was safe for the baby. She felt nothing about Vivian's unraveling, no satisfaction, no vindication, just tired. So tired her bones ached. Good, Harper said. She meant it. The company had represented everything she'd tried to become. Sophisticated, wealthy, accepted into circles that wouldn't have noticed her without the Bennett name attached. She'd twisted herself into shapes that hurt, had sanded down every rough edge, had performed gratitude for abuse disguised as love, all for access to a world that was poison wrapped in prestige. Owen continued. Bethany Walsh gave an interview, voice disguised, silhouette only. She talked about the harassment, the NDAs, the women who were paid off and threatened into silence. 6 others have come forward now. Former employees, interns, the sales director who suddenly resigned last year. 6 women, 6 lives damaged, 6 careers derailed. All so Garrett could feel powerful. All so the Bennett family could maintain its perfect reputation. Also, Vivian could pretend her son was something other than what he was. The news broke that afternoon. Financial fraud, embezzlement, sexual harassment complaints suppressed by HR. Bennett Industries stock dropped 40% in 2 hours. Clients terminated contracts. Partners pulled out. The company that had been worth $80 million on paper was revealed as a house of cards built on lies and leverage. Vivian's perfect family legacy crumbled in 72 hours, faster than she'd built her trap for Harper. Reporters camped outside the Bennett estate. The country club revoked their membership. Charity boards asked Vivian to resign. Suddenly, the Bennett name was toxic instead of golden. Philip, Garrett's father, filed for separation. The papers arrived at the estate by courier. Vivian called Owen, hysterical. How could Philip do this? After 40 years of marriage? After everything she'd done for the family? Owen was unmoved. He should have done it decades ago, he told Harper later. He should have stopped her when she drove out Catherine, when she started twisting Garrett into her image, when she turned family into a weapon. He was a coward for staying. Maybe he'll find his spine now. Harper's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting interviews. True crime podcasters wanting her story. Women's groups wanting her to speak. Everyone wanted a piece of her trauma. Wanted to package her pain into content. Wanted to turn her life into a cautionary tale or an inspiration or a think piece about domestic violence and class privilege. Sloan fielded most of it. But one request she brought to Harper directly. Local news station, female reporter, 30 minutes. Harper's terms. No questions about Garrett's childhood. No psychoanalysis. Just Harper's story, in her own words. I'll do it, Harper said, but only if I can say what I actually think, not the sanitized version. The interview happened in Sloan's office. Natural light, comfortable chair. The reporter, Amanda Chen, was kind, professional. She didn't ask invasive questions or try to make Harper cry for ratings. What do you want people to know? Amanda asked. About what happened, about what you went through. Harper thought carefully. This would be the only time she'd talk publicly, the only chance to control her own narrative before everyone else decided what her story meant. I'm not a victim, Harper said slowly. I'm a woman who made choices, some good, some bad. I chose to marry Garrett. I chose to believe him when he said he'd change. I chose to ignore red flags because I was young and scared and desperate to belong somewhere. Those were my choices. She paused, gathered her thoughts, felt the baby kick. A reminder of what mattered now. But I'm also a woman who chose to leave. And that's the part I want other women to hear. You can leave, even when you think you can't, even when you have no money, even when you're pregnant, even when his family is powerful and your family isn't, even when you're terrified. You can still leave. Do you forgive him? Amanda asked. Garrett? Harper paused. The question everyone wanted answered. The question that was supposed to measure her character, her goodness, her ability to rise above. As if forgiveness was the goal instead of survival. Forgiveness isn't the goal, Harper said finally. Safety is. Healing is. Building a life where my daughter sees what healthy relationships look like. That's the goal. Whether I forgive Garrett, that's between me and my therapist. But I'll never forget what he did, and I'll never let him do it again. The interview aired that night. Harper watched it with her mother. Diane held Harper's hand through the whole thing, squeezed tight when Harper's voice wavered. When the footage of the slap played, when Harper's face showed all the vulnerability she'd tried to hide. You were brave, Diane said when it was over. So brave, baby girl. Harper didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted. Felt like she'd run a marathon while carrying another human inside her body. Felt wrung out and used up and uncertain about everything except that she'd done the right thing. The next week was a blur, packing her belongings from the house while Garrett wasn't there. Owen had arranged it, had made sure Garrett was at his lawyer's office while Harper and Sloan and Diane loaded boxes into a U-Haul. Harper took only what was hers, her clothes, her books, the photos of her family, the ultrasound pictures Garrett had never looked at twice. She left the wedding china, the expensive furniture, the art Vivian had chosen. All of it felt contaminated, marked. She wanted nothing that reminded her of who she'd tried to be in that house. Harper moved into a small apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1,200 square feet, affordable on the salary from her old marketing job. They'd hired her back. Different company, better boss, flexible schedule for when the baby came. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, fair compensation, no strings. The apartment had good light, a park 3 blocks away, space for a stroller, room for Grace to grow. Harper hung photos on the walls, her mother, her sister, Sloan, Owen, surprisingly. He'd become a friend, an uncle-to-be for Grace, the family she'd chosen instead of the one that had chosen to destroy her. No photos of Garrett, not out of bitterness, just absence. He was a chapter, a cautionary tale, a mistake that taught her what she deserved. But he wasn't the whole story, wasn't even the most important part anymore. 3 weeks before her due date, labor started, fast, brutal. Her water broke while she was folding laundry. Harper called her mother, called Sloan, grabbed the hospital bag she'd packed a month ago because planning ahead was the only thing she could control. Diane drove like she was auditioning for NASCAR, ran 2 red lights. Harper didn't care. The contractions were coming hard and close. The baby wasn't waiting for permission or perfect timing. Grace was coming now. Sloan met them at the hospital. No husband, no Bennett family, just the people who'd shown up when it mattered. The people who'd pulled Harper out of the wreckage and helped her build something new. The nurses didn't ask about the father, didn't make Harper feel broken or incomplete for delivering alone. They just helped her breathe through contractions, held her hand, told her she was strong, told her she could do this. And she could. She did. Grace Crawford Bennett arrived at 2:17 in the morning. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect, healthy, screaming with impressive lung capacity that suggested she'd inherited Harper's opinions and wasn't afraid to share them. The nurse placed her on Harper's chest, skin to skin, heart to heart, and Harper counted 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, everything where it should be, Everything perfect, everything hers. Father's name? The nurse asked, preparing the birth certificate paperwork. Not on the birth certificate, Harper said. Just mine. Harper Elizabeth Bennett. The nurse didn't judge, didn't argue, just wrote it down, made it official. Grace Crawford Bennett, daughter of Harper. No father listed, no father required, just mother and daughter against the world. Harper's mother cried. Sloane cried. Harper was too exhausted to cry, too overwhelmed by the weight of this new life in her arms, this person who would look to her for everything, this daughter who deserved better than the example Harper had almost set by staying. The hospital kept them for 2 days, routine for first-time mothers, time to learn to nurse, to change diapers, to understand that keeping a human alive was harder than it looked in the movies. Grace was a good baby, slept in 2-hour stretches, ate efficiently, cried only when she needed something specific. Unlike her father, Grace was direct about her needs. No games, no manipulation, just honest communication. Harper loved her fiercely for it. The criminal trial concluded while Harper was still figuring out how to sleep in 15-minute increments. Garrett pleaded guilty to assault. His lawyer had tried to fight, had wanted to go to trial. But the video was damning. The witnesses were credible. The jury would have convicted in an hour. Garrett received probation, mandatory anger management, a restraining order. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen too many men like Garrett walk away with a slap on the wrist. "You struck a pregnant woman in public," Judge Martinez said from the bench. Her voice was cold, precise. "That takes a special kind of cowardice. You're lucky I can't give you jail time under the plea agreement, but I can promise you this. If I see you in my courtroom again, if you violate that restraining order, if you so much as send your ex-wife a text message, you'll see the inside of a cell, and bail won't be an option. Do you understand?" Garrett nodded, chastened, humiliated. Exactly what he'd done to Harper multiplied by 1,000. The civil trial for the prenup came next. Harper's new lawyer, not Sloane, who was too close to the case. A shark named Patricia Wu, who specialized in making abusive men regret their choices. Patricia argued that the prenup was signed under duress, that Vivian's lawyer had presented it 3 days before the wedding, that Harper had been 26, in love, and intimidated by the Bennett family wealth, that there was a clear conflict of interest, that the entire contract was unconscionable. The judge agreed, ruled in Harper's favor. The house transferred to Harper's name, free and clear. It wasn't worth much anymore. The market had crashed. The neighborhood had lost its luster once the Bennett scandal broke. But it was hers. She could sell it, pay off her medical bills, invest the difference in Grace's education fund. Harper sold it within a month. Took a loss but didn't care. Money wasn't worth memories. She bought a smaller place closer to her mother. 3 bedrooms, fenced yard, good school district, room for Grace to grow, room for Harper to breathe. Bennett Industries declared bankruptcy. The board voted unanimously to dissolve the company, liquidate assets, pay creditors. There was nothing left. Garrett's gambling and embezzling had hollowed out 3 generations of family wealth. The Bennett fortune that Vivian had tried so desperately to control no longer existed. Vivian lost everything. The estate sold at auction, the art, the jewelry, the furniture, everything that mattered to her, everything that defined her worth in the world she'd ruled for 40 years. She moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex that didn't take her calls seriously, that didn't know her name, that treated her like any other elderly woman with a grudge against the world. Philip moved to Florida, started a small woodworking business, made furniture by hand, simple, honest, beautiful. He sent Harper photos of a rocking chair he'd made. For Grace, maple with a smooth finish. He included a note. "I'm sorry I didn't stop her sooner. I was a coward, but I'm trying to be better." Harper accepted the chair. The apology. She wasn't ready to forgive Philip completely, but she understood that he'd been a victim too. In his own way, crushed under Vivian's expectations. Silenced by her manipulation. He'd been weak, but he was trying. Owen took a position at a nonprofit foundation, helping domestic violence survivors navigate legal systems. financial abuse resources, custody battles, restraining orders. Everything Harper had needed and had been lucky enough to find through Sloan. Owen wanted to make it easier for others, wanted his family's money, what little was left, to mean something good. "You inspired me," he told Harper when Grace was 2 months old. They were at the park, Grace in a carrier on Harper's chest, Owen pushing an empty swing just to watch it move. "You showed me what real courage looks like. Standing up when everyone said sit down, leaving when everyone said stay, fighting when everyone said settle. You did all of it, and you're still standing." Harper didn't feel courageous. She felt tired, felt like a person learning to be a mother while also learning to be herself again, learning what she liked, what she wanted, who she was without someone else's expectations defining her worth. But maybe that was courage too. Maybe courage wasn't fearlessness. Maybe it was just doing the next right thing, and then the next, and then the next, until one day you look back and realized you'd built a whole new life without noticing. Garrett moved in with his mother, two-bedroom apartment, shared bathroom, shared kitchen, shared misery. He worked in sales now. Insurance, made a fraction of what he'd earned as CEO, dated occasionally, women who didn't know his history until they Googled him, then they disappeared. He paid child support. Irregular, sometimes late, but he paid. The court had set it up through automatic wage garnishment. No choice, no forgiveness, no ability to manipulate the system. Garrett had seen Grace 3 times in supervised visitation, through an agency, with a social worker present. He'd held her awkwardly, like she might break, like he didn't know what to do with something small and vulnerable that needed gentleness. Grace didn't know him, wouldn't know him. Harper had decided that supervised visits twice a year were enough for Garrett to claim he tried, but not enough for him to damage Grace the way he damaged Harper. Maybe when Grace was older, when she could decide for herself, when she understood that DNA didn't equal family, that fathers had to earn the title through actions instead of accidents of biology. Maybe then Grace could choose. But not now. Now Grace needed safety, stability, love without conditions. Harper would make sure she got it 1 year later. Grace's first birthday, Harper's small apartment was full of people who'd chosen to be family. Diane, Harper's sister, Sloan, Owen, Bethany Walsh, who'd become an unexpected friend. Women from Harper's support group, people who understood what it meant to survive and rebuild. The apartment was decorated with balloons, rainbow colors because Grace didn't care about gender norms, and Harper was done letting other people's expectations dictate anything. There was a cake shaped like a duck because Grace loved ducks, loved pointing at them in the park, loved the sound they made, loved everything about them with the pure joy of someone who'd never been told what she was supposed to love. Grace smashed cake into her face with both hands, delighted, covered in frosting. Harper took approximately 300 photos. Too many. But she didn't care. These were the memories she wanted: joy, laughter. People who loved Grace for who she was instead of what she represented. Someone, Harper's sister probably, asked if Harper regretted it. The marriage, the time lost, the years spent trying to fix something that was broken from the start. Harper thought carefully, honestly. "I regret the pain," she said finally, "but I don't regret Grace. And I don't regret learning what I'm capable of surviving. Pain taught me what I deserve, and survival taught me what I'm worth. No, I don't regret it. I learned from it. There's a difference." That night, Grace finally asleep after too much cake and excitement. Harper sat in the nursery, the donated crib from the church, the yellow walls her mother had painted. But now there were photos covering one wall. Grace's first smile, Grace meeting her grandmother, Grace's tiny hand wrapped around Harper's finger, Grace's first laugh, Grace asleep on Owen's chest while he read to her, Grace covered in spaghetti sauce. Grace, of course, Grace. A whole life documented in moments of joy instead of fear. Harper picked up her phone, scrolled to her voice memo app, started recording. This was something she'd thought about for months, something Grace deserved to hear someday, when she was older, when she asked the inevitable questions about her father, about why he wasn't around, about what happened. Grace, if you ever hear this, if you ever wonder why your father isn't in our lives, here's what I want you to know. Harper paused, gathered her thoughts, felt the weight of truth and love and hope all tangled together. I loved him. I did. When I was young and stupid and desperate to be chosen by someone who seemed powerful and important. I loved what I thought he was, what I wanted him to be. But love isn't enough when the other person doesn't respect you, when they hurt you, when they try to make you smaller so they can feel bigger. The baby monitor showed Grace sleeping peacefully, sprawled on her back, arms above her head, completely trusting that the world would keep her safe because she'd never been given a reason to doubt it. I loved you more than I loved him. I loved myself enough, finally, to leave. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's wisdom. That's strength. And I hope if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to choose between love and safety, between what feels good and what's good for you, I hope you remember this. Harper stopped recording, saved the file, labeled it for Grace someday. Maybe when Grace was 16 or 20 or 30, whenever she needed to hear that leaving wasn't giving up, that choosing yourself wasn't selfish, that survival was something to be proud of. Harper remembered Mother's Day brunch, the sound of the slap, the silence that followed, 200 witnesses who froze and watched. She touched her cheek. No mark remained. The physical bruises had faded within 2 weeks. The emotional ones took longer. We're still healing. Probably always would be. But the baby that kicked frantically that day now slept peacefully in the next room. The fear Harper had carried for 27 months had transformed into something else. Not fearlessness, but the knowledge that she could face fear and survive it, that she could protect her daughter by first protecting herself. The mimosa glass had shattered first, then Harper's world. But worlds could be rebuilt, better, stronger, truer. Grace stirred in her crib, made a small sound, the beginning of waking. Harper went to her, lifted her daughter, held her close. Grace's warm weight settled against Harper's chest, her breathing evening out, settling back into sleep with the certainty that someone would always come when she called. Outside, the city lights glowed against the dark sky, soft orange, distant white. The sounds of neighbors coming home from late shifts, cars on the highway, life continuing all around them. Normal, ordinary, safe. Tomorrow Harper would return to work. Her mother would watch Grace. They'd made it work for the past 6 months, would keep making it work. It wasn't perfect. Harper was always tired, always juggling, always feeling like she was failing at something. Work or motherhood or basic self-care. But she was doing it, was paying her own bills, making her own choices, answering to no one except herself and this small person who depended on her. That mattered. That counted for something. Harper carried Grace to the rocking chair, the one Philip had made, maple, smooth finish. It creaked softly as she rocked. Grace's breathing synchronized with the rhythm, in and out, back and forth, the most basic form of peace. Her phone buzzed on the side table. Text from Sloan. You okay? Always checking, always making sure Harper wasn't drowning. That's what good friends did, what real family did. They showed up, they asked, they cared. Harper typed one-handed, Grace still sleeping against her. I'm good, really good. And she meant it, not in a everything is perfect way, but in a I survived and I'm still here way, in a my daughter will never know what it feels like to walk on eggshells way, in a I chose myself way. Another text came through, this one from Owen. Grace's birthday present is on your porch. Didn't want to interrupt the party. Happy birthday to my favorite niece. Harper smiled. Owen had been such an unexpected gift, family by choice instead of obligation. He saw Grace twice a month, brought books, read to her in funny voices, never missed a milestone, texted Harper photos of playground equipment with the caption, "This looks fun, should we try it?" Like a real uncle would, like family should. The present on the porch was a wooden toy box, handmade. Owen must have commissioned Philip to build it. The lid was engraved with Grace's full name, Grace Crawford Bennett, born into chaos but loved into peace. Inside the box were books, children's books about strong girls, brave girls, girls who didn't wait to be rescued, girls who solved their own problems, girls who knew their worth. A whole library of messages Harper wanted Grace to absorb before the world tried to teach her different. There was a note in Owen's handwriting, for Grace. So she grows up knowing she comes from survivors, from fighters, from people who chose love over fear. Happy birthday, little one. Uncle Owen. Harper pressed the note to her chest, felt tears prick her eyes but didn't let them fall. She'd cried enough, had earned the right to feel joy without guilt, to accept love without suspicion, to believe that good things could happen without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Grace woke fully, looked up at Harper with dark eyes that saw everything and judged nothing. Her tiny hand reached up, patted Harper's face, a gesture of comfort, of connection. As if even at 1 year old, Grace understood that her mother sometimes needed reassurance too. I know, Harper whispered. We're okay. We're going to be okay. The apartment was quiet now. Party over. Guests gone home. Just Harper and Grace and the life they were building together. Small, modest, nothing like the Bennett estate with its 5 bedrooms and marble counters and empty rooms that echoed with unhappiness. But this was home. These walls knew laughter. These rooms held safety. This space belonged to them and no one else. No one could take it away. No one could use it as leverage. No one could threaten to kick them out if Harper didn't behave the way someone else wanted. Harper's phone buzzed again. Email this time. From Patricia Wu, her attorney. Subject line, final distribution. The last day in assets from Bennett Industries had been liquidated. Creditors paid. Legal fees settled. What remained was being distributed to shareholders. Harper's share. From the prenup that was dissolved. From the house that sold. From the child support that had been automatic for a year. All of it added up. The number in Patricia's email made Harper's breath catch. $347,000. Not millions, not the fortune the Bennetts once had, but more money than Harper had ever seen in her life. More than her mother earned in 6 years. More than enough to secure Grace's future. To pay off Harper's student loans. To put a down payment on a real house with a yard. To breathe. You've earned this, Patricia's email said. Every penny. Don't let anyone tell you different. Harper stared at the number, thought about everything it represented. Pain, survival, justice, freedom, the cost of learning who she was when no one else was defining her. The price of choosing herself and her daughter over comfort and security and the approval of people who would never approve anyway. She thought about the girl she'd been at 26, so desperate to be chosen, so willing to ignore red flags, so convinced that love meant sacrifice and compromise and making herself smaller. That girl would have been terrified of this moment, of being alone, of having to figure everything out without someone else making the decisions. But Harper wasn't that girl anymore. She was a woman who'd walk through fire and come out holding her daughter. A woman who knew the difference between being alone and being lonely. A woman who understood that the hardest prison to escape was the one you built yourself. The prison door had been unlocked all along, Harper realized. She'd been her own warden, but she was also her own liberator. Grace made a sound, not quite words yet, but getting closer. She pointed at the window, at the lights outside, at the world she was just beginning to understand. A world that would try to tell her who to be, how to act, what to want, who to love. But Grace had Harper, had Diane, had Sloan and Owen and Bethany, and a whole village of people who would teach her different, who would show her that strength looked like asking for help, that courage looked like leaving when you needed to, that love looked like choosing people who chose you back. You want to see? Harper stood, carried Grace to the window. They looked out at the city together. Mother and daughter, 2 people learning how to be whole. Harper's reflection stared back at her from the glass. 29 years old, tired, scarred, stronger than she'd ever imagined she could be. She barely recognized herself. The polished Bennett wife was gone. In her place was someone real, flawed, honest, free. This is us, Harper told Grace. This is who we are. Not perfect, not rich, not whatever the Bennetts wanted us to be. Just us. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Grace babbled something that might have been agreement, might have been hunger, might have been commentary on the philosophical nature of identity and self-worth. Hard to tell with one-year-olds. But Harper chose to believe her daughter understood that they were building something new, something better, something theirs. The night stretched ahead. Bath time, story time, the routine they'd built together, the life they'd made from ruins. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't the fairy tale Harper had imagined when she'd said yes to Garrett's proposal, when she'd believed that marrying up meant living better. But it was real, was honest, was built on a foundation that wouldn't crumble the first time someone got angry or things got hard. This life belonged to them. Every choice, every consequence, every mom, every struggle, theirs. Harper pressed her forehead against Grace's, breathed in the baby smell of shampoo and milk and innocence. This was what she'd been fighting for. This moment, this peace, this certainty that leaving was the best decision she'd ever made. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. The mimosa glass had shattered first, then Harper's world. But from those broken pieces, she'd built something beautiful, something strong, something that would last because it was made with truth instead of lies. Love instead of control. Freedom instead of fear. Grace yawned, ready for bed, ready to close another day of her first year. Harper carried her to the crib, laid her down, covered her with a blanket her grandmother had crocheted, yellow and white, soft, made with the kind of love that expected nothing in return. Harper stood in the doorway, watched her daughter sleep, watched the rise and fall of her chest, the way her fingers curled into small fists, the way her lips moved like she was dreaming of something good. This was everything. This quiet moment, this sleeping child, this small apartment filled with love instead of luxury. This life built from nothing but determination and hope and the terrifying courage to walk away from everything familiar. Harper's phone buzzed one last time. Text from an unknown number. She almost didn't look, then did. It was from Garrett's lawyer. Short, professional, clinical. Mr. Bennett wishes to inform you that he will no longer be pursuing custody or a visitation. He believes it's in Grace's best interest to have stability. He will continue child support payments as required by law, but request no further contact. Harper read it twice, felt something shift in her chest, not grief, not even anger, just acceptance. Garrett was choosing himself, choosing his comfort over his daughter, proving that he was exactly who Harper had learned he was, someone who wanted children as trophies, but not as responsibilities, someone who loved the idea of family, but not the reality of showing up. Grace would be fine, would be better than fine without him, would grow up surrounded by people who loved her for who she was instead of what she represented, who stayed because they wanted to, not because they were obligated to. Harper typed a response. One word. Understood. She blocked the lawyer's number, blocked the last connection to the Bennett family except for the automatic child support payments that came twice a month like clockwork. That was enough. That was all Garrett needed to be in their lives. A number in a bank account, a footnote, a cautionary tale. Harper turned off her phone, set it face down on the counter. Tomorrow she'd call Patricia, make sure the custody change was legally documented, make sure Garrett couldn't change his mind in 6 months or 6 years when he decided he wanted to play father again. But tonight was for peace, for standing in her own space, for knowing she'd done the hard thing and survived it, for understanding that every choice she'd made since Mother's Day brunch had been the right one. Not easy, not perfect, not what she'd imagined when she was 26 and in love with a man who didn't deserve her, but right. Harper walked through her apartment, turned off lights, checked locks, did all the small rituals of ending a day. The baby monitor glowed green on her nightstand. Grace's steady breathing filled the quiet. The world outside continued its noise and chaos and relentless forward motion. But inside these walls, inside this life they'd built, there was peace. Harper climbed into bed, her bed in her apartment, paid for with her money, decorated with her choices, no one to ask permission from, no one to shrink for, no one to manage or placate or fear. Just Harper, just Grace, just the life they were building together. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. The last thing Harper thought before sleep took her was simple, true, hard-won. We made it. We're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. And in the morning when Grace woke with the sun and called for her mother, Harper would be there, would always be there. Not because she was trapped, not because she had no choice, but because she'd chosen this, had fought for this, had walked through fire to protect this small person who trusted her completely. The mimosa glass shattered first, then Harper's world. But from those broken pieces, from that public humiliation, from that moment of violence that could have destroyed her, Harper had found something precious. She'd found herself. And that was everything. Harper Bennett walked through fire and came out holding her daughter. That's the story. That's the truth. A woman with no money, no power, and no reason to believe she could win. Who fought back anyway? Who chose herself and her baby over security, over comfort, over everything familiar? And she won. Not because she was perfect, but because she refused to stay small. Now here's what I need from you. If this story moved you, click that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this, more truth, more survival, more proof that leaving is possible. Drop a comment. Tell me, what would you have done in Harper's position? Would you have stayed? Would you have left? Have you been Harper? Do you know a Harper? Your story matters. Your voice matters. Share it below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone in their own trap, someone who thinks they can't leave, share this video, send it to them, let them know they're not alone. That survival is possible, that there's hope on the other side of fear. Finally, subscribe, hit that bell, because there are more stories coming, more women who fought back, more endings that prove you're stronger than you know, more proof that the prison door is always unlocked. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. Harper did it. You can too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of the village that helps survivors know they're not alone. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, choose yourself. Choose safety. Choose the life you deserve. You're worth it.